It's never going to get easier than it is today. These are the good old days. Why do you need to own land? I don't know that you need to own land, but owning land, you move differently. And I don't mean owning real estate, owning property. I mean owning land. Having some place that you can develop how you want it developed. And you can develop with Mother Nature, or you can bend Mother Nature to your will. And that's all doable. It just costs money to have big equipment. When you have big equipment, you're able to do a lot of things. You can do it with little equipment. But when you bite the bullet and spend the money to get the big equipment, you can knock the tops off of mountains and fill the bottoms in and make level property and do what you want to do. You don't have to do that. And sometimes when you do it, you create other problems where water goes and loose soil washes and knocks churches out. We've seen that happen. We know somebody that moved and built these berms, and we've heard that many times. But when you have your property, you're going to do different things with it. And a lot of times it's trial and error. What you think you want, you sometimes find is not what you want. So more property is always better. How much property do you want? Way more than you think you need. We've built buildings and we've had properties. And when we came into this building, we said, man, 10,000 feet. We'll never fill that up. We put a 6,000 foot loft and that became 16,000 feet. And now we have another 5,000 feet to add to it. You just fill things up quickly. You don't have to. You also don't have to have one big building. You can have multiple small buildings. We live in a manner in this country where everything's a McMansion. And I'm not saying don't have a McMansion, but wouldn't it be nice to have a homestead with enough property that you could do whatever you wanted to do? If you chose to do that later, you were able to make enough money on your property to build that more modern place, or have a more modern place and then build a place that is not so modern. But the whole ownership of property is that you're going to treat it differently. If you lease or rent a place and you develop your life how you think you want it, and then something happens with that property owner and you're evicted from that property, what do you do then? Property only goes up in value. Even when you're terrible, you can lower the value of property, but it has a finite amount. That footprint of that property, short of poisoning it or something, is always going to have value. So when you develop a property that's not yours, you're adding value into that. And if you're pushed off of that property, if you spend 3 years or 5 years, if you look at 2019, property values were available and they were out there, and we said, oh, that property is expensive. It's way more expensive now. And a lot of people are waiting for the economy to collapse, and they think that the housing market rates are going to go down and all this stuff is going to happen. Maybe. But that cost of property, this property here, for instance, is never going to be lower than when I bought it 10 years ago. It's never going to be lower than when we built it out 7 years ago. And piece by piece, and a lot of it's through blood and sweat, not dollars, right? You can do everything with money, and that makes everything faster and easier typically. Or if you don't have money, you do it through calluses and scars and time and cold and wet and sweat and blood, and you develop that property. That property always goes up in value. And when it's your property, all that work that you did, it's for you and your future and your family and your future children. And you learn through that, and hopefully you can add to that, and you can expand on it, and you can keep building that. And it's all community. When you're young, you have your entire life ahead of you. And as you get older, you get smarter and you get stronger. But there's a point in the life where you hit that, and it starts to decrease at a certain age. We can extend that. We can expand that usable point in life. But ideally, you have somebody to carry that on, and you instill those values into your family and your future children and your grandchildren. And property just allows you to do that. You can move multiple generations onto one piece of property, and then you can keep those people close to you. And you can develop and lead through and guide through example. So if you have a piece of property and then you have children, the children grow up on that property, and you show them how to do the things that you know how to do, or you learn how to do them together. And then eventually those kids have children and they're able to also stay on the property. I'm not saying that everybody stay in the same house. You can build multiple homes, but we've been conditioned that you all need 2,000 square feet or 4,000 square feet or a swimming pool, whatever you need. Why not have one common area where everybody comes together to eat and recreate, and then have smaller cabins? Why do we not live in cabins where there's a bedroom and a smaller living facility, right? Why don't we have a bedroom area for each individual family or generation, and then come together into, or walk out across a deck or something into another building, which is the kitchen and the dining area, right? Why don't we do that? Well, a lot of it's about tax base, right? How many families can we put into a smaller amount, and what is the tax base, and how can we control them, right? When it's your property, they have less control over you. They don't want 10 acres of property sitting there with your family and your children and your grandchildren, right? They want to take that 10 acres of property and put 30, 40, 50 families into that place. That's why everything now is tall and skinny. They have convinced everybody that you don't need that much, while the people doing the convincing have everything, right? They have multiple houses that they never reside in. They go there occasionally. So when you have property, you have the ability to control your future. You have the ability to grow your food. You have the ability to do wholesome things that you want to do on your property. You could stay there. I spend a week, 2 weeks sometimes, and don't even leave this property. And then it dawns on me. I go outside and I'm like, where is my truck at? Where did I leave that at? That's what I want you to be able to do. And I would hope that that's the future. Even if you don't think that that's what you want, I want you to have the ability to do that. And when you figure out how to buy property, especially a younger person, and it's not to exclude older people. It's not too late yet for most of you. But when you can go and buy some property, or get some friends and buy some property together, and ideally you buy property, they buy property right next to you, right? So that there's never any confusion in the future, or you have it written up very well. But you have people with common interests, and you come out here and you camp here and whatever. You buy some unimproved property. You come out and start by rough camping, and then you clear an area out, and then you put in a small cabin or some tiny houses or something. And then as you come out here on holidays and vacation, you improve the property, and maybe you put up a little bit of fencing, you cut some kind of roads or trails, and you develop that property. It is very different when it is yours. Could you imagine going to an area that you love to go to, but you own that, all the improvements? You don't come back and that place has been scalped out, or it's not there, or the access is cut off. That's what happens when you own property. You're able to do those things, and every bit of sweat equity and money that you put into that property, that goes towards your future and those people that you want in your future. And there's ways to monetize that. You can put in hip campsites. You can put in tiny housing. You can put in different types of facilities for, weddings and venues. There's all kinds of stuff you can do. Build it however you want, figure out how to monetize it however you want, and utilize that property. But they don't make dirt anymore. There is a finite amount of land, and it's getting harder and harder to own. And when we were leaving California, I left California when I was 31. I was speaking to a young man the other day. He was 21. He's like, I want to leave California. Is Tennessee awesome? I'm like, yes, Tennessee's awesome. I'm not telling you come to Tennessee. What I'm telling you is, if you really know that you want to leave California, don't say that every day and leave when you're 31. You're 21 right now. You don't have a lot of attachments, and you have your entire future ahead of you, the best years of your life. You're the strongest. You're the healthiest right now. Go. Start over now. It's easier to start over now than when you're 31 or 41. You're going to keep saying, I need to leave California. You're going to be 51 before you finally leave. Everything is easier outside of California. Your money goes further. Your taxes are lower. I mean, you can definitely go to places that are crazy like California. There's also a ton of places that are easier to live. Like literally, we do things in Tennessee when we moved here that they would arrest us in California for doing. When we cut down debris and trees, we just lit it on fire. We went to the fire department and said, "Hey, I need a burn permit." You don't need a burn permit. I said, "You might want to come look at this. It's a pretty big pile. It's going to create its own weather." And it did. Every time we did a burn pile, it caught the forest on fire. It's not a big deal. We go rent a piece of equipment and they're like, "Hey, we don't have a trailer. Just go ahead and drive this to your place." We took a giant high lift balloon tires, didn't go above 5 miles an hour because they just drive it down the road. That's your property. When our friend Jeff moved here, all the leaves were in the culvert and he's raking them up and the neighbor comes over and goes, "What are you doing? Raking these leaves up." He goes, Jeff goes, "What do you do with them?" He's like, "I pour gas on them, light them on fire." He goes, "Nobody cares. It's my property. Nobody can tell me what to do." That's what I want for you. I want you to do, and you don't have to pour gas on the ground on your property. I'm sure there's some EPA thing. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm telling you I want you to have the ability. How much property do I need? Enough that nobody can see what you're doing on your property. That's how much property I want. How much property do you need? You need to ask yourself what 20, 30 years from now your kids are going to need to be there with you. That's how much property you need. As much as you can afford, and then have a plan to get more. That's what I want for you. When the Vanderbilts were building the Biltmore, old man said, "I knew I had enough property when it took an entire day to ride by horseback. That's when I thought I had enough property." None of us will probably do that in our lifetimes, most people listening to this. But what can you do, right? When you do something that you thought was difficult, the next step becomes easier. And when you keep expanding those boundaries. And most people, when they get any form of success, they get lazy and they get complacent and they are satisfied. And when you turn that satisfaction, that shuts off your ability to continue. So just keep pushing forward. Do things that you thought were difficult. And as soon as you're able to do them, do the next thing that you think is difficult, because as soon as you stop, comfort breeds complacency, and complacency eventually goes backwards. If you're not growing, you're dying. And if you're not progressing, you're reverting. So always do some project, always move forward, and take something that you thought was difficult. Take something that you thought a year ago you couldn't do, and you've now proven to yourself you can do, and do a little bit more of that. One more step today than yesterday, and one more step tomorrow than today. That's how you do it. You just keep going. So always progress. Figure out where you want to go, and get yourself some land. It's never going to get easier than it is today. These are the good old days. When we speak about how things used to be, that is your time in life right now. Things are not getting better until you take control of them. All of the crazy shit going on in the news. What do I think is going to happen in the 24 election? What do I think is going to happen with World War III? What do I think is going to happen during the next pandemic? When you own property and you have enough property where you can produce your food, much of that doesn't have any effect on you until you put yourself into that. When you insert yourself, generally through social media, if we turn the phone off, most people, if they didn't have to leave their property all the time or leave their town, if they lived rural, they didn't even know that there was a pandemic. They only knew because it was blasted in front of you over and over. And when you have property, you have the ability to care for yourself. And that's what I want for you. And we are going to give the winner of Homestead Apprentice a piece of property. And then the next rotation of Homestead Apprentice, we're going to come out and help you develop that piece of property. And then we're going to give the winner of the second Homestead Apprentice a piece of property next to your property. And there's going to be common areas, and you're all going to work and have access to those common areas, and you are going to own a piece of your own property, and that's how you're going to start. So if that sounds good to you, and you think that that's you, then apply for Homestead Apprentice. We're going to bring you out. You're going to meet everybody, and we're going to see what you've got and what you're made of and what we can teach you and what we can add to you. And I'm sure that you have something that we will learn from you as well. So if you want to be a part of the community that we currently have, and you want to be part of the community that we are building for the future, join up, come out, and let's see what you got.
Trying to tear